Well, you made it here, so we good. Are we ready, Rita?
Yes.
And we
Okay.
are live.
Oh, perfect. Good evening, everybody. It's 7:02, and we'll call
I
the
can't hear
meeting.
you, Keisha.
Oh, you can't hear me? Can everybody else hear me?
I
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. Check your audio settings.
There we go now. Yeah, I got it
Okay.
now.
Okay.
All
Perfect.
right.
It's 7:02. We call the meeting to order, and first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and
justice for all. Right. Next up, we have approval of the minutes from our September 25th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Veronica Morrow, Real Riverview Gardens. Make the
We
motion.
need to do roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I didn't, my bad.
When
Kevin?
I call the district, please state your name for the record. Afton. Bayless. Brentwood.
Ryan Flynn.
Thank you. Clayton.
Chris Wynn.
Thank you. Ferguson Florison, Kevin M. Martin here. Hancock Place.
Jennifer Kosman.
Thank you. Hazelwood. Jennings. Kirkwood. Ladue.
Present.
Lindbergh.
Megan Vetter and alternate Jennifer Miller. Jennifer Miller is also present.
Thank you. Maple Richmond Heights.
And Linda Robinson.
Thank you. Melville.
Patrick McKelvey.
Thank you. Normandy.
Teresa Pearson.
Thank you. Parkway.
Debbie Hopper.
Thank you. Pattonville.
Mary Kay Campbell.
Thank you. Rittner.
Rob Eaton.
Thank you. Riverview Gardens.
Veronica Morrow, Real.
Thank you. Rockwood. University City.
Joanne Suda, alternate K Gage, is also on the call.
Thank you. Valley Park.
Adam Watson.
Thank you. Webster Groves.
Alexander Kahn.
Thank you. I believe we have
Dr. Martin, can you call Rockwood again? Because Lynn
Yeah.
was on there.
Yeah, I saw it too.
I thought I saw it. Rockwood.
Lynn Midyett with Carrie Backert as the alternate.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Kenny Edgar from Afton's here. I was having technical problems.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Tony. Got you. Anyone else? Bayless, Hazelwood, Jennings, Kirkwood. Last call. We have a quorum, Keisha.
All right, awesome. I jumped way ahead of things. Next up, can we get an approval of tonight's agenda?
This is Veronica Morrow, Real. So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Yuda Usetti.
Okay.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Right.
All right. Anyone opposed? All right, moving on. Next up, we have approval of the minutes from the September 25th meeting. Can we get a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved. Kenny Edgar Afton.
Veronica Morrow, Real Riverview Gardens, second.
All right, all those, is there any further discussion? Questions?
I need to abstain. Jennifer Kosman Hancock.
Okay.
This
Yep,
is Debbie
me too.
Hopper. I'll abstain as well. I was not present at that meeting.
And I was not present. Mary Kay Campbell, Pattonville.
Kevin, did you have all three abstentions?
We have
Okay.
it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And we have 3 abstentions. Next up, we have public comment. Do we have anyone on for public comment, Rita?
None were submitted.
Okay, perfect. Next agenda item is our PAC updates. Turn it over to our PAC president.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so next slide, please. The SSD PAC update. So last meeting, for those who weren't present, I introduced our new SSD PAC initiative for the year, which is called Pathway to Self-Determination, in hopes to engage the partner district, especially to help our families. A little bit of a system update, if you will, to get our systems, up to the modern disability standards. So next, here we go. So updates from the PAC. So I've been discussing this with a lot of people, and we would really like to open the highway of information and communication and relationship between the PAC and the governing council. Most of the PAC isn't aware of who the governing council is. And we think it's important that the governing council and the Board of Education members really understand just the parent needs and the climate and the things that we're advocating for as your decision makers. And we had a request to make our SSD PAC May meeting an in-person meeting and join that with the Brownies of the Board event that SSD is doing. And what we'd like to do is open that up to you. We would love for you to be there as well. We are inviting, FACE was going to have some resources. We are going to have tables for every district. So parents and families can introduce themselves and meet Board of Education members, the governing council. We would really appreciate your attendance there, and we'll be doing updates on our initiative at that time as well. And that will be at central office on May 8th. And then we also would like to extend an invitation to our April Zoom meeting, which is April 10th, just to have a conversation to open up that communication between the parents and families to the governing council, Board of Education members. There are, parents who do a lot of advocating in their own home schools and their districts, but there are some systemic problems that go beyond really parent advocacy that we could use awareness of and help with. So moving on to the next slide. And just to mention some of these. So in the last meeting, I was able to have some comments after the meeting. And one of them I loved was we were talking about parents really seeing the need in partner districts to have an extra additional staff member to help with access to, para support and other things. And the question we got was, well, isn't that SSD's job? Can't SSD do that? And I want you all to know that's what our parents hear all the time. Go to our counselor. Do you know about any social groups or activities? Go to SSD. Can my child play in sports? Go to SSD. We go to our student services, the superintendents, go to SSD. So, I love that question because this is one of the reasons we created this initiative, Pathway to Self-Determination. And what I would like to ask you to keep in mind is, instead of asking, isn't that SSD's job? I'd like you to consider, what's the partner district's job for our families? How are they engaged? How can they help us? What's their responsibility? I think that'd be a nice mindset going forward. Some of the things, the systemic kind of problems that we found in many partner districts, we're all different, but let's start with the integrated athletics and activities. So in a lot of partner districts right now, our families aren't having access. There's not a road in for our children to participate in the athletics of the district or the extracurriculars, and that's something that kind of goes beyond the parent advocacy. And that's something that a lot of districts are struggling with, myself included. So that's something that happens here. And, we have a lot of DEI departments and DEI work going on, right? In a lot of these partner districts, and good work's being done. A lot of it is focused on gender and race. And meanwhile, we have the disabled students who are lacking physical inclusion and access to the curriculum and to athletics. And, you know, there's this thing called the real estate of inclusion, which is setting a child into a classroom where they're with the general population, but they're doing something separate. Like my daughter has been sent in with a coloring sheet or an iPad that has nothing to do with what's going on in the classroom. And this is important because what we've discovered in a lot of cases in a lot of partner districts is that for the foundation of educational inclusion, where the child with a disability, the curriculum's altered for them to access the curriculum, what you need is a general education teacher and special education teacher having time, paid calendar time to collaborate before the start of the year. And in many cases, this is not happening. You know, the parents don't know why. We've heard unions, we've heard caseloads, but it's not happening. And that's something that we would love to try to figure out how to advocate for. And then once again, you know, this fourth bullet point down, the weak introduction to the system. Imagine you have had 3 kids go through the same homeschool, right? You know the school back and forth. Maybe your child's in an accident. They're suddenly in a wheelchair. They can't speak. You have to discover what special education is. You know, what's happening is that the partner districts aren't giving that introduction to the family. It's coming from SSD, and you're having families go to the principals and counselors and being sent to SSD, and it feels segregated. And I think that is an easy fix to have the partner district help introduce the families to the system. So next slide, please. So these are some questions. Every district's different. Every school is different. There's people doing great work, but these are some questions to maybe keep in mind when you look around and talk to your families. Do you see children with disabilities in your athletic programs and after school activities? It's very difficult to get para support to attend, you know, the after school play. This is an issue, and we need help. And the question was, you know, whose job is that? If the SSD is short staff for paras and your classroom teacher can't come to help your child be in that play, be in that concert, does the partner district have any responsibility? We have community education programs like Parkway Rockwood Community Ed who have inclusion coordinators who provide that support. Is that something that you believe the partner district should help with our children? So these are some questions there. Next slide, please. So an update on our PAC initiative. Next slide, please. Just a brief overview for the members who weren't here last time. This is an umbrella initiative. It's going backwards from the idea of self-determination with children with disability having voice and choice, as much independence as possible, going back towards kindergarten, putting steps into place from K through 18 to help our families. And what we'd like to see are partner district counselors, athletic coaches, principals engaged, being able to help our families. I know myself and a lot of friends, you know, we go to the school, our homeschool counselor, what is there for my kid to do with social programs? They're empty-handed. That's an easy fix. So these are our steps of easy fixes we want to ask the partner districts to adopt. Next slide, please. And just briefly, here are some of the action steps we'd like to see. And lastly, the idea that we've come up with is an intro to SPED packet, which would be a partner district ask for partner districts to be handing to every new incoming family, newly diagnosed family who don't know what an IEP is, don't know what special education is. And by introducing this and adopting this, some of these action steps would be incorporated in that ask. So that's where we are right now with the SSD PAC. And we have some great meetings coming up. But once again, April 10th, we'd love to have some of you attend and let us know what you're, you know, just have a conversation and open that highway up. And once again, May 8th, we're hoping to have a celebration where we really get to, you know, get to know each other and have those conversations. So that is it from the SSD PAC. Well, next slide. There's some more, you know, some of these things, folks, are really simple. Like right now, school counselors in the partner districts, from the ones that I'm aware of, are not even able to, are not handing out like post-secondary opportunity information, even face brochures, ABLE account information. Folks are getting guardianship letters when they're 16. right now in 2023, even the, guardianship association says it's a last resort. So the whole idea here is that, systems move behind the times. And if we have superintendents coming out like, hey, we're in 2023, this is the ideal: competitive, integrative employment, self-determination, living as independently as possible. If we had that leadership system update and kind of went backward from that and engaged some of these other folks in the Parker district to help our families, I really believe, and we believe, there'd be a lot of success. So next slide, it should be the last slide. That's it. Any questions?
This is Debbie Hopper, Parkway. I do have a couple of questions for you. Can you provide us with the times on the two meetings you mentioned, May 8th and April 10th?
Yes, April 10th is there. All our Zoom meetings are always at 7 p.m. and those are on our SSD PAC website, which can be reached through ssdmo.org. The May in-person meeting, we haven't finalized those details, except that it will be at the central office. And I'm hoping your question means you're considering attending.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I am adequately prepared to attend. My other question has to do with getting back to the activities and the athletics. I mean, I guess that we would have to, I don't know how generalized that discussion could become, because I guess some of the athletics would depend on what the student's disability is and being able to do the things that are required in some of the sports activities. But my son had an IEP. Now, he did not have physical disabilities, but he participated in football and lacrosse. So I guess how much are we talking, I guess, a little bit of a different path here, because it might be an area that I'm not as familiar with and trying to understand.
I think what we're talking about here are the children who are more affected in self-contained rooms who need para support. And there seems not to even be access for, if they want to be involved in football, well, of course, there might not be an opportunity to play football, but there seems to be even a lack of being a cupbearer or a participation. And what I think a lot of the Parker district, or a lot of people might not understand, is that children with moderate to severe disabilities don't have the opportunities for, outside of school sports. So you have school supports, extracurriculars, and activities being extremely important, not just for our kids, but for typical kids, to learn how to work together and to model and just be a part of the community. So there's transportation issues, there's para support issues. And in my case, there's no opportunity for my daughter. What you have instead, what seems to be the easy way out for everyone, is the creation of more and more, I don't want to say segregated, non-integrative activities. So disabled cheerleading, disabled this, best buddies. But what our families are wanting is a place for our children to integrate with their peers, because that's learning. And that's what seems to be missing. And we're going to our student services, we're going to our directors and coordinators, and we're not quite sure where the hang up and hold up is. And that's something that we sure would like to get some help with. Hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you. So how does the PAC feel about Special Olympics programs? I know Parkway participates with Special Olympics. Is that something that is
fantastic?
Or
no, not at all. Fantastic. Special Olympics, Best Buddies, those are all wonderful programs. But when you have children who are not segregated, but you have children who spend, like my daughter, spends most of her day in a self-contained room. She wants to be around her peers. She's around two little girls and a boy. She wants to meet friends. She wants to have that social opportunity, right? And 30 years of research, you'd be hard pressed to find any research that doesn't show the huge amount of benefit inclusion has. Inclusion with your typical peers, and those opportunities are missing. They're not as they're all So what you have right now in 2023 is the ideal is competitive integrative employment. Integrative meaning not just disabled. And so by just having disabled only activities or buddy activities, what you're missing is the learning opportunity and social opportunity. So they're wonderful opportunities, but this is ADA too. Our kids should have access to participate in the integrative activities and athletics.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question as well. This is Alex Kahn. Are there any districts that you see doing a really good job or anything like at this that we would be able to reach out to?
That's one reason I would love to have governing council and people attend our April meeting. We'd like to hear, we want to see what districts are doing a great job of this and how they're doing it. Who's doing it? Is the Parker district doing it? Are they taking the lead? Are the coaches and athletic directors? This is something we'd love to learn more about how to advocate for this to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
Yeah, this is Joanne Sudi, City. I do have a question. What's happening when families are approaching building leaders about this at the building level?
I approached DEI. Well, I approached principals who couldn't answer. Go to SSD, go to SSD. The SSD director and coordinator are working on this, right? So, but nothing's moving in our district. So I went to the DEI and the DEI at that point wasn't even working with SSD or including the disabled children in their work yet, which is a nationwide trend, which is why the questions I asked was check on your DEI, see what they're doing. So they were not helping. We went to the director of student services. The last meeting he said, this is already happening. So there was a lack of awareness there. And once again, we are being sent to the director and coordinator. I haven't been able to meet with our superintendent. I've been trying for a couple of years. It's sent back to SSD. And this is one of the reasons for this initiative is that we need SSD and the partner districts need to be working together for our kids. We really want that engagement to help things move along. I don't know if it's happening in other districts, but that's where we're seeing roadblocks in my district. And I've heard similar. So hopefully someone's doing this right that we can learn about and get help from.
Rebecca, can you remind us which district you're from?
Rockwood School District. Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Jennifer Miller. So I think this is absolutely fabulous. And I think everybody, including all the people you spoke with at your own district, would love to see this happen. But I'm imagining that what it's coming down to is finances. Mm-hmm. And while students who are serviced by SSD are our own district students, these kids are our kids, not just SSD kids, part of it's budgetary. And so I think that's really going to have to be something that's a collaboration between the district and SSD, each partner district and SSD to really see movement on that. And I think that's probably what's holding it up.
I think you're absolutely right, which is why this kind of goes beyond parent advocacy. And also, but I have to say it's interesting to see, like we just had in Rockwood a SSD funded kind of DEI work, dignity and belonging. So we're seeing SSD being tapped into for some of this other stuff. And then on the other side, you see, I've heard that most partner districts have one employee that's, working for our families that's not SSD. So like an example in Rockwood, we have Dr. Jamie Smith. She's a coordinator, but that's it. And it just makes me wonder, it makes you frustrated. It makes you who in SSD and partner districts move differently in the buildings. They communicate with parents differently. And you are a child, you go into a parent of a child who goes into the school and you are only talking and getting resources and help from your SSD people. And the home school and district aren't able to answer questions and you get shoved off. This is where we see a lot of bad feeling in families and parents. This is where we see that I'm an SSD kid. promotes a lot of bad feelings. So this is what a hope of this initiative to introduce this intro to SPED packet. I hope that a partner district would adopt our initiative and just start these conversations and kind of erase that bad feeling.
I would just like to add a comment just on behalf of Ladue. I think that we have really integrated SSD staff into our district staff. We don't necessarily call them out. You know, one of the SSD teachers was one of our highlighted teachers of the month. We do have the Sparkle Effect, which is an integrated cheerleading opportunity for all kids, boys and girls of all abilities. They do football and basketball. We also had the Friday Night Lights, but that was something that was initiated by one of our students. So I think that it shifts from district to district on what the integration and what the level of engagement is. But I do think that it's very much needed. So I would encourage, if that's not happening in your districts, that you all maybe take that back to your boards and have those conversations. But I do think that it is finance dependent. I agree with you, Jennifer, that is probably one of the larger hurdles. But I mean, I don't think that it's fair to categorize and say that it's not happening just because it's not happening in one district. And I think that there are some amazing things happening across the county in some of our districts that are represented here.
Yes, and not to, this isn't a negative either, but you do have dual districts. You have 2 districts, and we have amazing things going on in Rockwood. We have the Sparkles. We have lots of good things going on. But when it comes down to families and listening to families and hearing what they have to say, this like perennial feeling that I keep hearing all the time, we're a SSD family. That's coming from somewhere. So hoping that what we want and what leadership wants is to not have that distinction, right? We want to say special education. So this is a goal trying to help us move in that direction. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's another reason we like to talk to you and hear from everyone. What's going on in your districts? What are the good things that we can model from, and how'd you get there? Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Lynn Midyat, and can you all see me?
Yes.
Because I can't see myself. I just wanted to point out that I think a really good step here is to shift the verbiage and get to the point of thinking there are no SSD kids in our partner districts. We have students who are served by special education. That special education is delivered by special school district. And think about, instead of referring to SSD teachers, refer to teachers in our building who provide special education supports and services.
Yes.
So I think we need to shift our thinking and also utilize the terminology students with disabilities. I'm assuming that's still current terminology.
Yes.
But
Lynn, you're right, and I know that Dr. Jamie Smith, and I mean this is the big push. But then you have families. I agree with you. I think that's the goal. But then you have families, and this is another reason we put this initiative, that if you're looking for resources, you have to go to ssdmo.org. They're telling you, families are telling, partner district staff's telling you to go to your SSD people. So, and I talked to Dr. Smith about this too, having this top-down idea of getting rid of that language. I don't think it's going to be successful if the families are feeling that segregation when they walk in the door of the school. So hopefully this initiative, by introducing the packet, some of these things could help bridge this, instead of being like, don't use this language, get rid of that feeling or mitigate that feeling to begin with. That's my hope here, because what you just said, I've heard a lot and I agree with, but I think it needs to happen instead of being like, don't use that language. I think it needs to happen from a feeling within the homeschool and the families too. That's what I hear. That's what I'm saying.
So I agree. It's just not the language. It's having that sense of belonging and the sense of ownership within that district.
Absolutely.
Right. It's the culture of the building.
It is the culture.
And the districts. And that's, and I will say though, I do feel like part of what causes some of that feeling of separation is that when it comes down to it, the partner district really does not have very much say over what is happening for those students, right? They have to go to SSD and ask for this service or that service. And I'll be honest, it's often met with roadblocks from SSD. Like that's what the partner district is experiencing.
No, I think we have lots of opportunities for great conversation here.
Yes, I would agree.
Thank you, everyone, for all the great feedback.
You're welcome. Thank you for your report. Next up on our agenda is the superintendent report, first quarter strategic CSIP plan update.
Thank you, Keisha Lee. This is Dr. Macklin. Just before Dr. Bolton comes, I just want to give a superintendent update of some celebrations that I want to speak to here, just regarding a couple of students' accomplishments. Bryce Brady, who is a 12th grader at Hazelwood West High School, is the first student who receives SSD services to be crowned homecoming king in the Hazelwood School District. And so we are definitely proud of those pieces. There were also 6 SSD teachers who were selected as the 2023 Emerson Award winners. And so we are proud of those 6 teachers also. 2 of those teachers are from our partner, or work with our partner school districts. And then lastly, Trey White, who is a senior at Afton High School, built 20 stands for SSD students. And Trey is a member of the Boy Scouts for America, and it became his Eagle Scout service project. And so I wanted to highlight those 3 students just before we get into the CSIP report.
That's awesome.
Dr. Bolton.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me present. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And the next one. So tonight I will be presenting on the strategic plan and the comprehensive school improvement plan updates for first quarter. And just a quick reminder, this is our second year of our 5-year plan. So we are in the first quarter of our second year. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder, this graphic was put together by our communications department, and it explains the difference between a strategic plan and a CSIP plan. Many districts have one or the other, but we have both. And so just a quick overview. When you look at a strategic plan, you're looking at the organization as a whole. So that includes operational divisions as well as our instructional divisions. When you look at our comprehensive school improvement plan or our CSIP plan, that is really focused on instructional side. So really focused on students and programs to help support students. Next slide, please. So tonight we will begin with our strategic plan progress. Next slide, please. So our first goal is really looking at our data systems and making sure that those data systems are supporting both our instructional and our operational side. So the first and second strategies, we have kind of combined those into one team because basically the first one is really looking at the skill set for priority setting and improving effectiveness. And then that second one is utilizing data systems in order to do that. So the accomplishments of this team for this past quarter is we have a subcommittee working on data governance. And if you're not familiar with the term data governance, basically that's making sure all the information in all of your different systems is correct. In special school districts, you know, we are a beast of a system, if you will, servicing, you know, almost 24,000 students. So we often have times where maybe our systems aren't always up to date in one aspect or another. So data governance would work to create processes to ensure that our data systems are correct across the board. Next steps, you might have remembered last year when I gave the update, we were working with MoreNet. We received a grant from MoreNet in order to help us share data across partner districts and with our teachers, so that our teachers would have one system that would have all their special education data, and the partner district assessment data, attendance data, discipline data would feed into that one system. So they were not having to go to multiple systems. We were moving right along with that and had worked with Elevate for a product. And then Elevate informed us that that product was now going to be retired. And so we are currently working with MoreNet to find another solution that we might be able to use for that grant. Next slide, please. Our goal 2 is really looking at our resources and making sure that we have equity across our resources. So the first strategy team has already completed their work for the CSIP cycle, and that was identifying the resources for both product resources, process resources, and then professional learning that we use across the different divisions and departments in the district. They then shared that data with the second strategy team, which that team is in the process of crosswalking that data to see where they might prioritize, focusing in on a plan for a process, then to make sure that those resources are equitably distributed. Next slide, please. Our final goal for the strategic plan is centered around a communication strategy and really looking at our two-way communication with all of our stakeholders. Our district is sometimes really good at one-way communication, but we want to ensure that we're not only sharing information, but also getting feedback on that information from all of our stakeholders. So the first strategy there is working with businesses that we partner with. And so accomplishments this quarter for that team is they did hold some partnership meetings with a variety of partners and worked on getting some updates from those partners on how they get information. And so really looking at updating our website and then also providing a quarterly newsletter that will inform our partners. And then within that, thinking of that two-way communication, also having a link to a partner survey so that they could give us feedback as well. So that first newsletter was sent out, and once the survey closes, we will be taking that data and looking at the results of that data so that we can incorporate that into our plans. Also, they will do another partnership meeting in the spring, and then also working through some of our CTE and transition pieces to ensure that we have information to share out about those programs. And lastly, that team will be working on an onboarding process. So whenever we engage with a new partner, they will get an onboarding document that kind of explains Special School District and what we do, who we are, and so that we can look for other opportunities to partner further with that agency or partnership. Our second strategy is all around family engagement. We were presented with a Promising Practice Award that highlighted our welcoming walkthroughs of our schools. And that is a practice that we have shared with the network collaboration with many of our partner districts. So I know many of our partner districts are also using the welcoming walkthroughs. So we went to Washington, D.C. and accepted that award, which was very exciting. That's some work that's been taking place for about 5 years. And so it was nice to see some fruits from our labor there. Also, we have created through our Panorama survey platform, our Family Quality Indicator Survey. And really our purpose for putting that on our Panorama platform is so that districts outside of SSD can utilize that tool to measure the impact of their family engagement in their own district. So that has been set up for a pre and post test. So that'll allow districts to also see the growth they make throughout the year once they have filled out the pre-assessment, if you will, or the baseline, then put some actions in place, and then they can come back and fill it out at the end of the year to see the progress that they've made. And lastly, that group had updated the questions for the family survey. Our family survey will be sent out in January. And so we are working on the launching of that family indicator survey, and then the launching of the family, school, and partnership survey, which on this slide, it does say December. We did have a slight delay, and we're now going to push that out in January. We feel like we'll get better results from our families if it's not right around the holidays. Our last strategy for goal 3 is establishing that communication system amongst departments. And so this has been reassigned to Chantel Chandler, who is in our communications department. And so right now she's reviewing the work that was done previously and recalibrating that. And we'll be getting those meetings scheduled for that strategy team to move forward. Next slide, please. I'm going to pause right here and ask if there are any questions related to the strategic plan before I move into the CSIP plan.
Molly, I have a quick question.
Sure.
With regards to the panorama survey, the quality indicator survey, is this are the questions specific? Because we have panorama as well. Are those questions specific to special education, or are they just general questions that would be comparative to any other district?
So those are the family quality indicators. And so those are indicators that research has shown have high impact on engaging families. And so they are for any school district.
Okay.
So general education, special ed, they're not specific to special education. It would be for general education as well. And same with the welcoming walkthroughs that we just won the award on. That would be for any school.
Okay.
Actually, any location, honestly. We use it in some of our office buildings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions on the strategic plan?
Dr. Bolton, before you move on, I do want to publicly recognize and give you and your team credit. I think that when you talk about the award that you were honored with and received in Washington, D.C., as we heard from Rebecca's presentation in the beginning, there is a constant struggle to ensure that we have inclusive and welcoming spaces for all. And so to see that external award, I'm very proud. We are very proud of you and your team. And I know that you guys will be honored tomorrow at the board meeting for that work, but I want to say that publicly.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin. All right, if we could pull back up the PowerPoint, we will then move into our CSIP plan updates. Next slide, please. So our first CSIP goal is planning for student success. And so our first strategy under that has been a strategy that we've been working on for quite some time and has made tremendous progress. And this is preparing our students for that positive post-secondary outcome. So right now, that team had developed previously, you may remember, some self-determination indicators and modules. And so their work right now is integrating what does self-determination look like for students within an MTSS or multi-tiered systems of support model. This is a very low research area, so I do feel like we're on the cutting edge here with this, in that how do we ensure that students have that self-determination as they're working through a system. And so they are meeting with our MTSS facilitators to think about how that self-determination can be embedded within school systems. And so they're going to be continuing their work around that. Our strategy number 2 is looking at connecting student data and research. So really looking at what are those major factors that influence student achievement, and then how can we proactively plan around them? So right now that team is looking at linkages kind of upstream and then looking at the different risk factors that can be impacted. So starting to collect some data there. From there, they're going to develop a pilot where they can partner with a few districts to give input on that process. With Panorama, we have been piloting their success platform, and the two districts that we have been piloting that with are Hancock and Melville. Melville being a Panorama user themselves, and then Hancock not being a Panorama user, but we're seeing how we can integrate that data from Hancock into our systems and see about that data sharing component. So that's kind of another vein that's been going on. So this strategy team will be looking at the data that we're getting from those two districts and working with some of that. Our last strategy for this goal is the collaborative planning for partners. And so that strategy team has worked on their design principles. And when we think about design principles, these are the important things that we must keep in mind as we're moving forward to develop a solution for this strategy. And so you can see that they've identified their key areas there that they want to keep in the forefront of their mind as they develop their solution. And then their next steps will be working on brainstorming that solution and then developing a prototype of a solution or a tool or process that they might use in that collaborative planning. Next slide, please. Our second CSIP goal is around decision making. And there are two strategies with that goal. The first really is talking about philosophy. So thinking about our programming decisions across districts and what our philosophy is around that. So this team worked really hard last year to really collect the data from all schools in the county to see what programming looked like. So now they're going to begin disaggregating that data and then decide action steps from there. The second strategy is a team, again, that's been around for quite some time and working on ensuring evidence-based practices. This team has taken inventory of a lot of the tools and processes that we use throughout the school districts to really look at supporting our teachers to help support our students. And so right now, we are in the process of developing a prototype that will evaluate those tools. What we find is sometimes our teachers get overwhelmed with the number of tools we have. So we really want to know which of our tools are most effective so we can narrow that scope down for them and make sure we're meeting their needs. Next slide, please. Our final goal is about learning environments and systems that support our highly mobile students. I've always said working for this district that our district could be a great equity, equity promoter, if you will, because of the sure fact that we touch students in every partner district. And so if a student moves from one district to another, there should still be continuity in that student's services, and we can be the stabilizing factor for that. So that's really what this strategy team is focused on, is looking at that continuity of service and instruction for when students do have those school changes. So right now they are adding some additional team members as they identified some gaps in their membership and really thinking about the target audiences to begin journey mapping and seeing how our students are moving and where they're moving so that we can then coordinate and ensure we have those programs that are steady for those students who may be in transition. Next slide, please. And that will open it up to any questions that you may have on the CSIP plan.
Molly?
Yes.
This is Mary Kay Campbell, Pattonville. I do not have a question, but I do have a comment, and that is this continuity of services is excellent. In the past, we would have children that would move from one district to another. And as a teacher in the district, it would be 2 weeks before we got an IEP or any of the identifying factors, how to service these kids. There were problems that resulted from that. So this continuity of services is excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is Debbie Hopper, Parkway. I'm curious about the matter in the CSIP pertaining to self-determination in MTSS, and how I don't exactly know what question to ask here, but I'm just kind of wondering, how is that evaluated and monitored? And does that go along with motivation? Is this just strictly from a curriculum standpoint, or are you looking at self-determination? You know, at what levels would this be looked at?
So when you think about self-determination, yes, motivation would play a part in that. Advocacy, the students being able to advocate for themselves would also play a part in that. Students participating in goal setting and then actualizing those goals. So in some instances, when you think about multi-tiered systems of support, you're thinking both about the social, emotional, or behavioral side, as well as that academic side. And that self-determination really crosses both of those realms. When you think about the goal setting and being able to self-advocate. And those are skills that all kids need to have to be successful in today's society. And so I think that's where we're thinking the integration within MTSS makes a lot of sense. However, when we went to look at the research, it's just such a new area that there's not a lot of research out there yet. And so that's what we're hoping to do is really try to integrate it into those multi-tiered systems of support and looking for that positive impact for students so that when they do leave our schools, they have the skills they need to be successful. Did that help answer your question?
It does. And the reason why it stuck out at me is because our school district has developed a vision of a learner. And one of those visions has embedded within it this idea of that the student will act with agency. And when I look up sense of agency, because we've kind of been having conversation about this particular word agency, it mainly has to do, my understanding is with some motivation of the student to take responsibility also for their actions, understanding consequences to what they do, decisions that they make, etc. So I was kind of wondering if that's, I like the word self-determination actually a little bit better than acting with agency. So I was kind of trying to figure out if that was along the same lines.
Feel free to steal our word. We don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. This is Joanne Sudi, U City, and congratulations on your award from character.org. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I do have a question around the CSIP and the strategic plan, of course, are designed to impact student outcomes. How are you connecting, whether these are the best strategies to improve student outcomes? Is there a connection in how you're measuring these?
Yes, each one. So if you would, when you look online at our strategic plan, we have it all in one document, our strategic plan and our CSIP plan. We actually do have the measurements for each one of our strategies within that plan. And especially on the CSIP side, they do all tie back to student achievement. So be that positive post-secondary outcomes, be that improvement in our assessment scores, both at the state level, but also at the district level, be that in improvement of attendance, lessening of discipline, actions, those types of things would be some of the measurements that you would see within that.
Is that something that would be appropriate to share with the governing council?
Absolutely.
That'd
Absolutely.
be great to see. Good. Thank you for your response.
Absolutely.
This is Debbie Hopper again. I just want to make sure I understand that these are applied to partner district students as well as students attending SSD schools, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's not necessarily, well, I guess it is a question, because while you were saying that, what popped in my head was, each school district has their CSIP, and I know Riverview has his and you all have yours. And what I'm trying to figure out is how the CSIP that SSD has created will align with Riverview Gardens. And I'm just curious as to, was any of that taken into consideration when you all created it, since it does apply to students who are receiving services via SSD, but also are students that attend Riverview Gardens? I'm just wanting to make sure that what we are doing is also aligning with you all, so that so we are, being inclusive of what your CSIP is in conjunction with ours to be able to measure success. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So when we created our strategic plan and our CSIP plan, we looked at our student data of all of our students.
Okay.
So that would include, like I said, MAP data. We do have students who have math and reading goals. We do FastBridge on all of those students, whether they're in the partner districts, if they're in the partner districts. And then we have assessments for our students that are in our schools, district assessments for students who are in our schools as well. And so all of that partner district data, we also look at their MAP data and their EOC data. All of that does come to us. We are able to access that through DESE for each one of our students who receive services from us. So all of that data would have been looked at as we set our goals and our targets.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Molly, as this is Debbie Hopper again, as I'm thinking more about that, Veronica, thank you for that question, because that kind of expanded on a little bit of where my thought was. But with that, are there conversations then? What's the process then between SSD and the partner districts to talk about that data? How does that happen? How frequently? Because that is one of the things that I continually get concerned about every time we see a progress report or an annual report on our MAP tests, or and then we see certain groups, and our IEP kids are always flatlined basically. There's rarely any movement up or down. Every other group has some sort of movement, but it seems like our IEP students are always just the same, and it's low. And so how does that conversation take place then to address issues like that between the partner district and SSD, and talking with the data of these students?
So it's great that you just asked that question, because just last week we released to our SSD administration their data stories for the fall the fall assessment data. And so within those data stories, that's where you see suspension data, you see disproportionality data, you will see their FastBridge data, and all of those different sorts of things. And so, we do encourage our SSD administrators to be sharing that district. It is shared with the liaison, who is our go-to, if you will, in the partner district. But we do encourage the directors then to share that with all administration in the partner district. So, you know, that is one way we look at it. Also, if you'll think back to our strategic plan, our very first goal, very first strategy is around creating those data sharing as a system for sharing data back and forth that would make it so much easier. If you guys have the opportunity, I would encourage you to please ask to see those data stories. They're amazing. And our staff puts in a lot of time to put that data together and make it user friendly for folks to actually be able to use and digest. So that is one way that we are trying to share the data back, if you will.
And is that the official title of the report? Is data stories? Is that what we should be asking?
You would be looking for the data story for Parkway.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have one. Chris Wynn Clayton. This goes back to the strategic plan. Sorry, I'm looping back to that because I now thought of, we talked about the panorama survey. So what, can you guys help me understand how to adjust for those students who can't, that survey is really not accessible to them?
Sure.
Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. So students who might need picture support for taking the survey. And so we have created that on our intranet. So our teachers do have access for our panorama survey. Now, what I will tell you is if your district's using a panorama survey, they may have chosen different questions, right? But what I would volunteer for you is if you would like for us to create that, we can do that for you.
Okay.
Just reach out to me, and if you can send me a list of your questions, you know, I'm sure some of them are similar because we're doing the norms. But that is not hard for us to do. And so we have created those picture supports for our students who may be non-readers to be able to access that survey.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Molly. Next up, we have the budget update from Ms. Sagerty.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Next slide, please. So the purpose here is this presentation will provide an update of the FY24 budget cycle, keeping in mind all four of our goals as they are stated: our equity goal, our staff goal, our curricular goal, and our facilities. Next slide, please. We also want to make sure that we are adhering to our mission and vision statements when supporting our students. Next slide, please. Major revenue assumptions this year. The FY24 revenue benefits are from a reassessment year, property tax increase. Our investment earning increase is mainly due to higher market rates. Our Medicare revenue will increase. Actuals came in at 17.3 million, whereas we budgeted 11 million for FY23. Full expansion of Medicaid will increase our revenue. Currently, we have our revenue for FY24 budgeted at 14 million. This year, we're looking at capturing, I'm sorry, let me back up. For FY23, we captured about 6 months of our RBTs. Medicaid for transportation will be captured for a full year. And also for FY23, we only captured Q4 for transportation. We're also working on capturing revenue from our paraprofessionals, assisting with personal care for our students. Also, DESE will be funding transportation for FY24, and it's projected for this year at 21.2 million. Next slide, please. Our major expenditure assumptions, we're currently working on our SDNEA negotiations for the next 2 years. Our 610 for our bus drivers was ratified July 1st. That came with an increase of almost 600,000. Our benefits continue to increase. Currently, they increase going into FY24 at 7.2%, which is approximately a $7 million increase. Also, any additional costs for staffing and materials are to be determined as we continue to monitor the budget and address needs as they arise. Next slide, please. Our enrollment for special school district, overall enrollment has increased by 2.3%, or 524 students in the past year. A big portion of that is our early childhood has shown an increase of 19.7%, equal to 388 students, or 74% of the overall increase. Between our K-12 and our technical schools, they were pretty much flat, showing the majority of our overall increase was in our early childhood. And with that being said, we're basically playing catch up from COVID. So our parents are feeling more comfortable with allowing their children to come back to school. Next slide, please. Our budget forecast will continue to be around the needs of our SSD schools, partnering districts, our disproportionality districts, and our high needs districts. Next slide, please. Here's a list of our tier 2 districts, our disproportionality districts. Developed for disproportionality, we developed a framework to support our partnering districts across the county that are identified as disproportionate. We're providing additional support that focuses on areas identified to each identified school and partnering district. And we're focusing on supporting social emotional learning and interventions for literacy and numeracy. Next slide, please. This is an example, a working document of our disproportionality allocation of funds. Next slide, please. Tier 3 is our high needs districts. Here, this is additional materials, additional support for our high needs districts. So additional materials, professional development, coaching, inclusive of literacy, numeracy, and/or social emotional learning. Next slide, please. This slide here shows you our distressed community index. Next slide, please. In our an example of our tier 3 funding. This is also a working document. Next slide, please. So once again, our tier 3, our high needs, as I stated before, it supports additional materials, professional development, coaching, literacy, numeracy, and social and emotional learning. Next slide, please. Purchasing and curriculum. We've been working on identifying efficiencies throughout the district. With that being said, we have centralized some of our processes. For instance, Dr. Molly Bolton handles our centralized purchasing of curriculum and instruction resources. Doug Austin, our Chief Information Officer, handles the centralized purchasing of everything related to technology. And our district warehouse handles centralized purchasing for our day-to-day supply needs. Next slide, please. So what to expect? November 17th, the budget cycle was opened. All budgets were distributed to all of our partnering districts and everyone within the SSD district by November 20th. All budgets are due back by January 5th, inclusive of our disproportionality and high needs plans. In January, we will also work on final presentation with our partnering district cabinet Final approval of our preliminary positions and materials, primary teaching and related services. And then from March to May, Finance will build and revise our final budget, including all approved positions. Next slide, please. Thank you. This concludes my presentation. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
This is Debbie Hopper, Parkway. Can we go back to I think the second to last slide?
Second to last slide.
Second to last, maybe even the one before that. No, a few more. Keep going. No, the other direction. Toward what to expect. The timeline for all the budget stuff happening. This one right here. Are there, I'm just trying to understand the process for the upcoming, so this is going to be looking at the budget for FY25, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what kind of conversations are taking place with the district in developing their budgets? Who's being worked with? Are there meetings between SSD and the partner districts, and how is that going this year?
So what we did this year, Ms. Hopper, is that we met with every single partnering district, and we met with everyone in the SSD district. We sat down and we went over line by line with everyone in reference to their budget. We also showed them year over year their expenses, how they've been trending year over year. And this year what we did, and we told them this as we were meeting with them, this year what we did, we actually provided them their budgets based off of FY24. So we made everything flat to FY24. And we gave them an area where they could do any additional needs that they had and or any reductions with justifications and the CSIP goal that it applied to. Okay. And we did that with every single partnering district.
And is that what's due by January 5th back? Or
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then what happens after that? Once you get that information, and do you just automatically put that in and approve it and use that as the given for the budget, or is there more discussion with regard to if there need to be changes made?
We'll have more discussion. So we'll review what they submitted and we'll have more discussion.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? When you said that you met with district officials, who does that entail? Is that the superintendent? Is that the finance director, student services? Who's met in those meetings?
We met with the directors.
The director, I'm sorry.
The SSD director?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chiquita Moore, Chief Officer of Partner Districts, and I just wanted to add a little bit more information to the budgeting process that we currently use. The directors is one component of the process for the budgeting cycle, but we do also include conversations with the superintendent as well as the partner district liaison when we're talking about partner districts. So they are present and participating in those conversations as it relates to the budget. The timeline that you were able to review, that information has been shared with all of the superintendents, the directors, as well as the partner district liaisons. Through this process, there will be moments when we will come together for those discussions as it relates to the board, but all of the final components of that will include all of us sitting down at the table together collectively having those conversations about needs specific to partner districts as it relates to staffing programs, as well as the curriculum materials and resources. So we do in-depth cover all of those pieces to make those final determinations for the budgeting process. And we do ensure that we include the voices of all of those individuals as we make those decisions.
Shakita, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask this question, and thank you again for that clarification as well. Is that something that, since we are the representatives for our particular districts, that we can see a final version of as it pertains to our individual districts?
Yes, Ms. Marrero, yes, those are questions that you should be asking as members of the governing council.
Okay.
That information should be privy to you. You should be able to have those conversations with the partner district director as liaison. When we come together for that meeting, those conversations are led by the director as well as the partner district liaison for those who have districts that are disproportionate. We want to ensure that all of the voices are captured in this process and that it's not a one-sided approach as all of the decisions being made specifically from a director's perspective, but to ensure that we're looking at programming of a school and district, the initiatives that are taking place within that school district, any specific needs with programming as it relates to scheduling, any new initiatives when we're talking about curricular materials and resources, all of captured through this process.
Thank you so much.
I have an additional question, just haven't gone through the PRC process. What happens, or what happens to those dollars for those disproportionality districts that are unused?
Absolutely.
And have been unused. I mean, do they go back into a pot, or, do we, come tap you on your shoulder like you got this money on the table? What happens to those funds?
Twofold. In the past, what has been done, this is year 4 for me being in the district, and the practice that has been used is for us to take a look at those funds and to ensure that they are carried over. And it's my understanding that those funds roll over from the previous year to the next. Also taken into consideration when we talked about those high needs districts, when those funds are remaining, to what extent are there opportunities available to provide additional supports to some of those high needs districts, and funds have been utilized to support in those ways as well.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And just to clarify, the disproportionate funds, the disproportionality funds are to be used to help all students within the partner district, correct? Not just be dedicated to students with utilizing SSD services.
That is correct, Ms. Hopper. Those funds should not just be used specifically for special education settings. It should be used to address those areas of disproportionality that are identified for a specific school district.
In a follow-up question, is there some sort of Missouri statute or something that pertains to dispro funds at all? I have no idea. I'm just asking because I honestly don't know.
Yes, both at the federal and state level.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, this is Adam Watson from Valley Park. I have a question. I noticed on one slide, our district is in the mid-tier when it comes to the DCI. However, I did not see our district listed in either tier 2 or tier 3. Can you expound on that a little bit for me?
I do not have the information before me to speak directly to that, so I do apologize, Mr. Watson. But if I'm correctly understanding your question, you're asking about how they are identified in the heat map and to what extent we're supporting Valley Park?
Correct, with regard to the disproportionality funding.
So I do know that they're not, I don't believe, Deidre, are they identified as a disproportionate district?
They are not.
Do you know why by chance? And if you don't right now, that's okay.
So to be identified as a disproportionate district, you would have to have some level of disproportionality to take place. And so that would be the over-identification of students with disabilities and or looking at discipline for a specific subgroup of students, whether that's students with disabilities or gender or race or something to that extent, to make those decisions as to being identified. So not all districts are identified. It's those that may be contributors to county-wide disproportionality. In many cases, that's where we see the most areas of disproportionality. And what I mean by that, Adam, is we take a look across the entire county. To what extent are districts suspension rates, whether it's in school and or out of school, how is that impacting the level of disproportionality that may occur throughout the county and or representing a specific school district? Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much for the answer.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you both for the budget update and the elaboration. Our next is an action item for approval of the updated Board of Election procedures. There was a meeting held on November 29th by the Board Election Subcommittee. So I would defer to the members of that committee to present this information. Is that Debbie, Lynn? Anybody want to take that?
I'd be happy to do that, Lynn, if you'd like to add to, or if you want to start it, it doesn't matter to me. So we did meet. This was a gathering back together of a subcommittee that was formed back in 2018 to evaluate and review the process by which the governing council elects the special school district board of education directors. We felt that there needed to be some continued evaluation review since it had been a while, to continue to add some robustness to the way that our process is conducted and the expectations of candidates as they apply to the SSD to be elected to the board. So the items that are in board docs are some additional things that we would like to have consideration made. Specifically, one of the things that we'd like to start doing at some point is to ramp up some of the advertising process for the election taking place and the various different sub-districts that are up for their seats. And then consider, we don't have time to do it this year, but considering for future years, having an information session for prospective candidates prior to their filing, announcing some kind of an informational session for those particular sub-districts, even considering bringing together some members of the administration and the board from the partner districts, along with the SSD administration, so that we can introduce to prospective candidates what all goes into becoming a board member on the special school district and what their involvement is going to be and what the expectations are with that. We also wanted to be more specific in what the expectations were in the application process, that we wanted to ensure when they can pick up those packets, Some of the past information said that they could pick up the packets on the opening day of filing, but in fact, they really should be offered an opportunity to pick those packets up prior to the filing date so that they could have an opportunity to complete the packet information and then turn it in on the first day of filing, which is how the other types of when you run for regular school board is what happens. You get your name on the ballot that day. You file for your candidacy. So we wanted to outline that a little bit better, and then just identify the actual school districts that are in each of these different sub-districts that are up every two years, actually every year, whether it's 2 districts or 3 sub-districts. And then how all of that plays out. And then in the interview process, we wanted to be more clear that the candidates are expected to be physically present during the interviews. And we wanted to get that in writing so that there would be no question at all about what might happen if someone's not present for the interview. There is a letter that also goes to the candidates in their application packet. And within that letter, it would identify information about what to do in the case of an emergency, so that if someone is, say, on their way to the meeting, they get into a car accident, who do they call? Who do they contact? So then it would be up to the governing council to decide what to do, if we should move forward with that meeting that night or reconvene it at another time when all candidates could be present. And then under the election of the board members process, that all pretty much stayed the same, I believe.
Yes.
There weren't many changes to that. And then just updated the census information at the very end. So that's the summarization of it.
Oh, Debbie, you also forgot to mention that we felt that that one should be in person, that when we do that process, even though that should be in person.
They should be physically
I think that's understood,
present.
right? I think it was understood based on what we had put down, but just to state it out
Mhm.
loud so people will understand.
And the reasoning behind that is when candidates file for a board seat in a school district, they have opportunities to put on a website, to attend forums, to attend meetings, to have, to be invited to a variety of public meetings. This process is very different when it's only the governing council that's interviewing the candidates. And to just receive a packet of information and try to vote on an individual sight unseen does not seem to give adequate review to a very important position where we need to have a good feel for how someone can communicate and can express their views, and to really see from them in their own words their desires for wanting to be on this on the SSD Board of Education. So we just wanted this to be very clear that that is indeed an expectation, be physically present for that interview.
And so to add to that, so we're hoping that all the governing council members can also get that date on their calendar and be in attendance as well. One thing that we're going to continue to work on a little bit is what does the interview process look like? What are the questions? And encourage all of you to submit questions so they can go and we can narrow those questions down so there's no overlap, but everyone's voice is heard.
Yes.
And we even talked about, and this was going to be for some additional follow-up, of course, as we continue to evaluate this process, is when we ask these questions, how do we evaluate the candidate do we use it? Because we currently don't use a rubric. So there's some rubrics out there that our school district used when we had an appointment position that we had to fill and various different things of that nature. So we thought about taking a look at a rubric to see how we might be able to score each of the questions that's answered by each of the candidates, to see the possibility of being able to rank that a little bit in case there is ever any question in the future as well, for candidates that are applying as to the reasons why they were selected over another candidate.
Well said. Thank you.
So are there any additional questions for the election subcommittee? Leland?
Yeah, I have a question. Alex Con Webster Grove. So I've been looking at the document that's in board docs, and it's just not very clear as to I hear you on what you said you changed, but the document itself, it's kind of hard to follow, like what changed within this document. It looks like it's
right, and I don't think, Rita, that we got the corrected version.
The document in board docs is the final version for approval. I emailed out the document after the meeting that had all the changes in red on it.
I think some of the additions weren't included. I should have brought that to your attention, I think. So like the very first section is all new. That whole, for those of you who may be new to the governing council also and haven't seen this before, the notification and information process section is completely new, so that we've not ever done an information session before for prospective candidates prior to candidate filing. We also wanted to get a little bit stronger action, if you will, to advertising for these positions. And how might we do that? And there's also actually some noted in here is SSD policy reference, because there's actually the special school district has a policy, if I can find it right now, about board of elections, about school board ballots, electing school board members. And that's where some of this information about the notification process comes into play. And when I found this, I thought, well, we need to reference that. And that's never been done on this document. It's actually, where is it? There's particular, sorry, I got to get all my stacks here. There's a particular policy that talks about.
It was on the first page, I believe, in this document. At the bottom.
BBB-R.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, school board elections. Yeah, there's a policy BBB, and then board member qualifications. There's BBBA, and then there's school board powers and duties, BBBA also. That doesn't seem right, but so what we wanted to do was make sure that we get into this document what specific policies there are pertaining to the school board election, so that those could be referenced as well. Oh, here we go. Yeah, BBBR also, school board elections. So we want to make sure that that was in there. And then adding the names of the districts in each of the sub-districts, that had not been done before, so we wanted to make sure that that was in there. We also changed about the information packets that in the document in board docs, it says the candidate may pick up information packets when the district has available, and that they're to contact the superintendent's office for availability. In the past, what had been written in there was that they were to be picked up on filing, the date of filing. So like tomorrow is the first date of filing, December 5th. And that would have been the first day that a candidate would have picked up a packet according to this particular procedure. We didn't feel that that was very fair, that they should have some extra time to be able to fill out the packet. And especially now that filing dates have been condensed, they're shorter, they don't have as much time anymore. And in this application process, they're required to get 3 letters of recommendation. So they need time to turn all of that around. And so we wanted to be a little bit more fair in this process with giving them time to be able to get all that information together. Let's see. I think everything else in that other section there below the sub-districts was unchanged. And then the interview process, all we said in the original document was the governing council will interview candidates at open meetings. That's all it said. And so this is where we wanted to get more specific with being expected to be physically present during the interviews. We also had some conversation. Now that our meetings are Zoom, pre-COVID, they were always in person. And they were held very much like a League of Women Voters forum where everybody was in the same room together, and you just went down the line asking questions. We've tried to formalize that process more where questions are submitted to the chairperson ahead of time so that people just aren't flinging out questions, and we're not having candidates not all answering the same questions. So that's very important to the interview process, that we thought that every candidate should receive the same question and have an opportunity to answer it. So that's why back in 2018, this whole interview process was even more formalized at that time to give specific times on when to make an opening statement and how the questions are asked and how much response time they would have. And that would be done in a very orderly fashion. And then the electing of the process is still the same. Each candidate is voted upon in a roll call vote within the sub-district, and governing council members can vote in the affirmative for only one candidate, but they can vote in the negative for all candidates if they so choose. So you can only vote in the affirmative for one candidate. Even if there is only one candidate in that sub-district, you can vote no for that one candidate. And then there are processes in place that if a vacancy is determined, then a vacancy gets called. And then if the governing council declares an impasse, then we have to go into another election as a scheduled meeting in June. And if there ends up being a vacancy on the board before a term is concluded, then that becomes the responsibility of the SSD Board of Education to appoint an individual to the SSD board until that position is up for renewal. I hope that helps clarify. Is there something more specific you think that should be expanded upon in this document?
No, I just wanted to make sure that I was following the changes in the document that was uploaded on board docs. Just wanted to make sure that it was only supposed to be 3 pages and not the 9.
Oh, no.
No, yeah, it's yeah.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Are there any additional questions? Joanne, I see your hand. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry, I couldn't find the button. It was covered. No, what was my question? I'm sorry. I'll get you back in a second.
That's okay. I have one, just a clarifying question, because I thought I heard you say that the board packet can be picked up before filing. I mean, I don't know. Does that mean that kind of seems like it opens it up to a year-round process if you want to just get the packet? And I think that given the fact that the SSD board candidates do not have to do the same level of campaigning that we do, in terms of a full blown out election and campaigning and yard signs and all of those things. It seems like we're giving them a little bit more latitude in terms of being able to gather their information.
Rita,
Is that correct?
would you mind speaking to that on when the packets would be available? Because there was a timing on your end, I thought, of when that could be available.
We have the workshop with the MSBA on any changes or updates for the year. That is usually either the end of October or the beginning of November. So we would not be able to do any packets until after that update. So it would we could probably do about 2 weeks before filing opens, would be about the maximum time we would be able to do to have the packets ready.
I'm just not familiar with districts providing packets prior to filing opening. Because I know typically when board filing opens, that's when you're able to get the packet, to get the information, to get everything you need to know what you need to run. So I don't know why we would provide that prior to that for.
When they shortened the filing timeline, MSBA told us that some of the things changed so that we were allowed to give out the packets before the filing date. We just cannot accept them before filing opens. And it came across from the shortened filing period.
But I guess what I'm saying is it's short for all of us, especially those of us that have to actually put together a campaign and raise money. So I don't know that that's necessary.
Well, I guess what we heard. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I just looked at mine when I got it last year. I got mine at the beginning of November, middle of November last time I ran, even for filing for December 5th. So I guess many districts, I don't know.
I guess it's district by district.
Yeah,
Yes.
Berkeley did theirs as well last time when they allowed it before you can get the packet. You can't turn it in until the morning of. So just throwing it out there.
Okay. Because I wonder how that works for districts that are now filing with St. Louis County. It just seems, I don't know. Just my thoughts.
I see what you're saying, Keisha, but I think my thing is like currently that packet it's nothing like the packet we fill out. Like we don't really have, we are just like checking boxes and signing our name and writing our address, whereas this is asking them to answer like 12 essay questions. And so I think it would be very difficult for someone to be able to do that in one day if they wanted to turn in on the filing date.
But the filing period is more than a day, correct? What is the filing period, Rita?
It goes until December 26th, I think, or the 27th this year.
Yeah.
The 5th through the 26th.
And
I just don't think that it's too much to ask for people who are running for special school district board of education and don't have to actually put up to a campaign to make sure that they have all of that information. I mean, it's not like you're just walking in saying, "Hey, I think I want to be on the board." That would eliminate those people. Is what my thoughts would be. So you want someone who is prepared and knows that they have to have some information together to get it. And 20 days is not, I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I'm one person.
But I would say that some of those questions require research, which are things that like when I do a campaign, I have, 3-4 months to research and to answer at forums and things like that. Or like if a newspaper gives me questions, like I get 2 weeks to fill out the questions. And I'm not dependent on someone else to write me the letters of recommendation during December, which is a busy month.
Understood.
Yeah, that's why we thought that maybe making the packets available so that they would have some time would be helpful.
I think that would be nice. I think it'd be an act of grace. I don't see why it would hurt, as long as everybody knew when they were available. And I my question when you're ready.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So in your description, in the event of a vacancy, the board would appoint the replacement. However, I believe that the board elections are a governing council responsibility. What
that in one of these policies, if I can find it, it specifically says that that's the only time that the SSD Board of Education can appoint a member to the SSD board is when a vacancy occurs. Otherwise, then it is completely up to, it is in the control of the governing council to do that. If I can find, because it is in, it's in one of these SSD policies.
I think that's occurred twice since I've been on the governing council.
And to clarify, can I clarify on that? The for the vacancy in this procedures, it's stating if we have nobody apply. So if they don't receive a quorum of votes, that's not a vacancy. It's if we have no candidates apply for a seat. So there's no one to vote on, is what it's stating in the procedures.
And I think, Joanne, for also clarification, that only occurs if somebody vacates their seat before their term is up.
I just want to make sure, thank you. I just want to make sure we're not in conflict with state statute about how the board is appointed. I'll make sure our policy is consistent with state statute.
Yeah, I think those are the only exceptions.
I'm wondering.
I'm trying to find it, and I did not flag that particular issue when I was going through all these policies. It also says in policy BBB under school board elections that Board of Education members whose seats are up for election the following year are encouraged to declare their intentions to run for re-election by September 1 of each year. I don't know that we've ever been really strict with that. Let's see, school board. Surely it's in this one, school board elections here. I'm just not, it's not stepping out at me here.
It's in the BBB-R.
Is it? Okay. Did you find it where exactly under, got redistricting, this and school board elections?
Debbie, are you speaking to BBE-R?
BBB, 3B.
BBE-R.
I'm not, I remember reading it in one of these policies about when the vacancy occurs. That's the only time that the Board of Education, oh, here. So it's getting to that issue of candidate of vacancy versus an impasse, which are two different things.
So if there's a vacancy, what you're talking about, wouldn't the person have to go through the election process the following election cycle, like in our districts? So we can appoint somebody, but then the following election cycle, that person has to run for election.
Correct.
My understanding, oh, I wish I could find it. Is
It's
that
on page 2 of BBB-R under candidate filing number 1.
Well, that I see the process for elections will follow the sequence below. Is that what you're talking about?
Number 1.
Board of Education members, that one?
Yes.
Whose seats are up for election the following year are encouraged to declare their intention to run. for reelection by September 1, right? But I'm trying to find the part in the board policy that talks about the vacancy and that being the only time the SSD Board of Education can appoint someone.
Yes, Debbie, what you're speaking to is BBE-R, which
BBE.
which
Okay.
states that the board is responsible for appointing an eligible person to fill the vacancy until the next board election. At that time, the board appointee and other interested candidates may apply for the seat. What you're looking for is this last sentence. The governing council, according to its process, will interview and elect one of the candidates to serve on the board at the education for the remainder of the term. BBE-R.
Okay, I don't believe I printed that one out. I think that's what the issue is. So yeah, so that's correct then, right? That if we reach an impasse, then we go back to the whole election process again. But if there's a true vacancy, if an SSD Board of Education director resigns their position before their term is up, then it's up to the SSD Board of Education to appoint someone until that term is to fill out the rest of that term. And then that position becomes open for the governing council to vote on.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
So at this point, are we ready to vote on this?
I have another question. So it says that people cannot be on their home board and on the SSD board. If somebody wanted to run, if their term was ending and they wanted to run for the open seat at the end of their term on their district, would they be on two boards, or would that be a back-to-back board service?
Well, I guess in they would have to resign from their district board since our election's in March and the municipal elections are in April. So at some point there would be an overlap. So they would have to resign. I guess I don't know what that looks like.
Well, it depends. When are they sworn in to the SSD board?
At it's at the board meeting following our meeting, correct? After the election.
Yes.
So the next
So
board
it's
meeting.
the March board meeting.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So there would be an overlap.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I guess on our handout, it does say on page 2 on our election, on the governing council's election of board member process, on page 2, the second bullet, if no applications are received from any one sub-district, the governing council will declare the position vacant and ask the newly seated board to appoint someone to fill the position until the next regular election. So I think is that some of what Joanne is asking, to make sure that that is consistent with statute, that can be done?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
I don't know the answer to that right now.
I wonder if we should just contact MSBA and make sure we're in line with state statute. Is SSD an MSBA district? It is, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Yes, it is, Joanne. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if we should contact MSBA and just make sure we're in line with state statute and our policy and our procedures.
I can contact them.
Is that
you,
all right
Rita.
with everybody?
So then we would bring this back for an action item in March before the election, because that's the next meeting that we have scheduled.
Or we could take action on it tonight and revise it if we find out that we need to. That's another potential course of action.
To do an amendment to it. Yeah. I think it would be nice to get at least this part approved, specifically when we're wanting to make it clear on what some of our interview process is. And I mean, these are things that have already been happening for the most part all along.
So does anyone have any additional questions or concerns before we move to try and make a motion and get this approved? Okay, hearing none. Can we get a motion to approve? Hold on, I lost my computer. It died in the middle. To approve the election of board members process as it has been presented tonight.
So moved.
Thank you, Debbie. Is there a second?
Second, Kenny Edgar Afton.
Thank you, Kenny. Any additional questions or discussion?
No.
Do we need to do a roll call or how should we?
I think that would be good.
Kevin, can we do a roll call?
Yes. Afton,
Okay.
Yes.
Bayless. Brentwood,
Yes.
Clayton,
Present.
Burke Floor, yes. Hancock Place,
Yes.
Hazelwood,
Aye.
Jennings,
Yes.
Kirkwood, Ladue,
Yes.
Lindbergh,
Yes.
Maple Richmond Heights,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Normandy,
Yes.
Parkway,
Yes.
Pattonville,
Yes.
Rittner,
Yes.
Riverview Gardens,
Yes.
Rockwood,
Yes.
University City,
Yes.
Valley Park,
Yes.
Webster Groves.
Yes.
You have enough.
I
Madam
just
President?
I just wanted to comment that the person from Clayton said present. So could they make their vote either a yes or a no vote instead of present?
I'm sorry, when you said
It's
roll
okay.
call,
Yeah.
you said roll call. I was
That's
thinking-
okay. That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
Are
It's
you
a yes.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so it carries. So we will look forward if there are any additional revisions for the next meeting from this subcommittee. Thank you so much for your work on getting us to this point and getting us some clarity in the process for the elections.
Thank you for the support.
Absolutely. Next up, our agenda item is the Board of Elections discussion. There's 2 seats coming up in this upcoming election. Sub-District 5, which is Brentwood, Kirkwood, Lindbergh, Valley Park, and Webster Groves, as well as Sub-District 6, which is Ladue, Normandy, Rittner, and University City. So filing opens December 5th, closes December 26th, and the election will be held at our next meeting on March the 4th, 2024. Any additional discussion on this topic?
Keisha, the only the one item to discuss on this matter would pertain to whether or not we're going to conduct a personal physical interview by Zoom or in person.
Oh, I thought I heard clarification that it would be in person. Did I not hear that?
Okay,
correctly?
that's fine.
So the March 4th meeting will be in person.
Okay, all right, very good.
Hearing nothing else on that topic, the next up is the Governing Council meeting calendar, which, like I said, our next meeting is scheduled for March the 4th. That will be an in-person meeting. We'll cover the preliminary budget and budget goals, approval of the revised fiscal year 24 budget, and then elect the new Board of Education members. Then following that, our final meeting for this school year will be June the 3rd, which is another Monday, where we will approve the budget, approve the strategic plan and CSIP, and we will have a reorganization of officers. Any questions on those topics or anything, any conflicts with those dates? Okay, hearing none. Are there any announcements? Does anyone have any announcements?
President Potroff has an announcement.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. This is Katie Potroff, president of the SSD School Board. Just wanted to update you all. Dr. Keenan remains on administrative leave of absence while SSD continues its work to resolve an internal personal matter. We're working with all due haste, and Dr. Macklin remains as the acting superintendent until further notice. SSD cannot share information regarding the confidential personal matters. If and when there is any additional material developments impacting SSD's superintendent position, we will provide that update immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well written. Any additional announcements? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
McKelvey Melville.
All right, can I have a second?
Second, Debbie Hopper Parkway.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, you be here by yourself. Have a happy holidays, everyone.
Okay, you
Are we
too.
doing a breakout?
And a
I'm
blessed
sorry,
new year. Yes.
Are we doing a breakout session? They had
No, the breakout
sessions is
session has
canceled.
been canceled.
Okay, all
We
right.
will not be doing breakout sessions this evening.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.